Hello and welcome to the Practice Marketing Podcast, highlighting successful strategies from North America's fastest growing clinics and experts so you can learn from their wins and power your practice growth. Hi, I'm your host, Neil Trickett, CEO of Practice Promotions, and today's focus, we're going to talk about how to put out those admin fires in your physical therapy business with Brian Gallagher, and boy, is this a hot topic, no pun intended. But today we're talking with Brian. He's a physical therapist by training, but since 2006, he's been running MEG Business Management, and MEG provides virtual training systems, coaching to PT owners, billing, admin solutions, all kinds of amazing stuff to help clinics run more efficiently, and so that they can reach the top 10% of practice owners. And Brian's going to talk to us about something really practical, which is how to put out those administrative fires that we get in our business. And so let's face it, everyone needs some help with that. So Brian, welcome to the podcast.
Awesome. Thank you, Neil. This is right up my alley. This takes me back to why I started MEG in the first place. I remember back in the day, I was kind of consulting, flying around the country and giving people a bunch of solutions and then on to the next city. But, just like being a physical therapist, you want to Velcro yourself to your patient and you want to work together in a collaborative way to get them to a higher ground, to a higher optimum level of function. And so for me, this is exactly what I do day in and day out, is how do I optimize the level of function or output of our staff, right? Everybody we hire. So this is a perfect topic, and thank you so much for having me right out front. And for those of you listening, thank you so much for being here and listening and attending this podcast. I know you have a lot of options and you have very limited time, so thank you for spending it with us.
Awesome. So Brian, I got a quick question for you before we get rocking here. I'm just curious, what does MEG stand for?
I get that question a lot. So on the surface, we say Management Expansion Group. That's the brand. MEG is your Management Expansion Group. We're all about expansion. But to my friends and coworkers and family members, they know I name all of my companies after some family connection, something with my family. So it's actually the middle initials of my daughters, Megan, Erin, Gallagher. Just like another business I have called RK Enterprises. It's Rachel, Kayla Enterprises. So I try to work the family into everything I do because honestly, that's what motivates me to do what I do.
I love that. Thank you for sharing, Brian. I appreciate it.
Yeah, the cat's out of the bag now, right?
Yeah, no. Both are great, right? Management Expansion Group totally says exactly what you do. You help people expand their practices with better management. Yeah. And naming it after your daughters too makes a lot of sense too, right? Let's have some fun with that. So, all right. So let's talk about common administrative fires that pop up in our practice, right? And we all have had those challenges. I think we're comfortable because we know clinicians really well. But when it comes to admin, that's a whole nother ball of wax, a whole nother game. So what are some of those common fires that we see pop up in the practice?
Yeah, we could touch on any one of the topics. It could be billing related, front desk related, marketing related. It could be anything. But honestly, I have to say, when you really peel it back, it almost goes to its core. It's going to center around something regarding time or money. Mm-hmm. So it almost doesn't really matter what the topic is. It's honestly, in my book, I see that as just a symptom, like whatever has them emotionally upset, whatever noise is emanating from that area. When I really look back at my 33 years of doing this, I've come to recognize that I need to be patient. I need to listen to what's being said. I need to listen for the substance, It's kind of funny, I live out in the country, I live in the farm, and, I grew up that way, and then I went, metro, built my practices, raised my kids, did myself, and now I'm back to the farm, and it's interesting what I noticed, for instance, I'll see a shadow go by me and I'll immediately look up to see if that's a red-tailed hawk or if that's a, whatever kind of a falcon, whatever's going on, because I got 24 chickens. So, you start to pick up on what the actual reality is about what's in front of you, not just the noise of it. So I will say you will have fires in your practice from time to time, centering around any one particular topic, but please take a moment and really diagnose. It's the same thing we did with patients, right? They come in and it hurts here, it hurts there, but we all know the culprit is probably the low back or maybe coming from the foot or the ankle. Same things going on our administrative staff side. If we just take our time and look, don't listen, literally look, don't listen, you could really be effective in identifying what's really going on.
That's awesome. And I just, being in practice, I just remember, there's areas that you want to control really well. And
Mhm.
I think the better the control is there from an administrative perspective, the easier the other aspects of the practice become. So like if a patient
Mhm.
shows up and they show up on time and their payments all handled, you can get to work, your clinicians, your providers can get to work at helping that person get better. And then, the front desk is going to make sure they show up for that next visit and they're all scheduled and everything's taken care of. So to me, it's like the work of the admin side is to make sure everything flows really smooth in the clinic so that you can deliver that excellent care that you want to give. And I've talked to so many practice owners, and I'm sure you've seen a ton of this, where they're operating at a certain level and they think it's normal. So, like for example, like front desk efficiency and cancellation rates, and I've talked to people and they're like, "Yeah, we get like 85% show rate or 15% cancel," and that's kind of normal. They try to justify that. It's like, oh my gosh, you're losing so much, in terms of visits across the desk. So why don't we just start with like front desk? Because that to me, what the way that I always looked at the front desk was one of the most important positions in the practice. Because if people aren't showing up or controlled well there, then it's hard to get anything else done.
100%. And I couldn't agree with you more. I think everybody listening is hearing what you're saying is basically the administrative functions are the facilitators, right? They facilitate the good quality care being delivered. The more your admin is out, the less able they are to efficiently help facilitate your highly skilled, highly trained clinicians to deliver the clinical care, which is quite frankly what we're here for. We're here to help as many people achieve an optimum level of health. But if we can't move them through the operation systematically, if we can't have a greater degree of efficiency, then we can't be as effective as a clinician as we want to be. So I agree with you 100%. I think the front desk is a very interesting place to start because it literally launches the ball rolling down the hill of the series of activities that are necessary in order for us to proficiently give the care we want, right?
Mhm.
And to your point, Neil, the more we can establish standard operating procedures, the more variables are removed, the fewer or smaller the cracks are in the sidewalk that things can fall between because you have a standard operating procedure. Because what do staff really want? They want consistency, certainty, and confidence. And if the rules are always changing, if the policies are always moving around, you're rocking the boat and you're just asking for trouble on the administrative side.
That's great. I like those three C's there. And do you find that clinics don't train enough across the front desk?
What did you find when you were running your practice? Like, do you remember when you had your staff? Like, that is okay. I think about this often. I say to myself, I hire a PT, I orient them to the practice, and I'm like, go to it, Sparky. It's like I'm not like there's no like, oh, this is the goniometer. Let's show you how to do this, right? But here's
Right.
manual muscle testing. I don't think you and I have spent any time with a therapist that we've hired ever in our years and years and years of doing this, right? So yeah, you're right. What is going on that there's such a heavy lift on this routine, ongoing variable of training on the administrative side? Is it because we didn't get trained on it right to begin with? Is it because we didn't establish the systems of holding in control? Because control equals income. So I agree with you. I think it's real. Like I have a learning management system. So I shot hours and hours of content for every position in a PT practice. So every single person who's a MEG Academy trained person, they can literally just enroll the people and onboard them because everyone's getting trained the same way, the same message, the same time, the same metrics. Those things that are important in our life. Our bank account, we measure the balance, right? Our credit score, we measure that. Our grades, all the things in life that are so important to you, you will measure. So to answer your question, whether it be front desk, whether it be insurance verification, whether it be your billing team or staff or whatnot, you have to have a system of measurement. That system of measurement will tell you if your onboarding and your training protocol or your SOPs are working or
Hmm.
not. It's all
Yeah.
about managing by statistics because your other alternative is managing by personality. Oh, I
Right.
like her. She laughs at my jokes, or he buys me donuts and Krispy Kremes. That's not going to work.
Hmm. Yeah, and you're so right. I mean, that's just the way to grow your business is you have to manage by statistics, right? You have to be able to understand what's happening, make decisions that are data driven, right? Not just guessed. And
100%.
I was listening to like Dan Martell and like Alex Hermosi the other day, and they both said like, if you want to make more money, you got to look at your bank account every single day. So it's like the same thing with like your front desk and your billing. Like you should be checking those metrics every single day because so much can vary or happen on a daily basis. And if your team is looking at that, if you're looking at that, it's going to get pushed, right? It's going to get improved.
Yeah, and you said, not only is it important for us to measure where we've been, because that's statistics, a historical representation of where you've been, one thing measured against itself in a new unit of time. That's the definition of a stat. How many evals I have this week, how many I have over the last 3 weeks, same measurement over time. But here's the thing. It's got to be bumped up against a KPI. It's got to be bumped up against a key performance indicator. It's got to be bumped up against a target, a goal, an objective that is absolutely needed. That's absolutely needed to be attained in order to be successful in your practice. It's like you said, Neil, we walk in and people say, yeah, my stat is this, my percentage of I have a 13% cancellation rate, but as long as we're below 15%, we're good. And you and I would be like, what? 15% is the bar? Not acceptable.
That's funny. And so, as you've coached hundreds of different practice owners over the years, I'm curious, when it comes to the admin side of it, do you find that, and obviously you need both of these things, but is it that you don't have the right person in the right seat, or is it that you don't have, or is it a greater percentage of that, or is it a greater percentage of that you just don't have the right, say, processes in place in the first place?
That's a really good question. I think it's a little bit of both. I think, like for us, if you want good staff retention and you want to minimize the open chairs you have on the seats on the bus, if you will, it's all going to come down to like a 5-phase hiring process, like finding the right person who's absolutely the right fit for that chair. It doesn't mean they're not great people. It just means you have to evaluate both their competency, skills, and their beingness. Are they willing and able? Are they committed and loyal? Are they dedicated? Transparency breeds trust. So very early on, I'm looking for people to be honest and be transparent about how they feel and what they see and what they do. From there, if I have the right person, because look, I can always help you do the tasks better. I can always enhance your skill set, but I can't necessarily make you a better person. I can try, and I can try to institute, because I always believe we're hiring people to invest in them both personally and professionally. So I have a lot of systems to do that. And we'll touch on some of those a little later. How do I try to assist them best personally and professionally? Because I know, like, I think it was you who were sharing with me, Neil, like there's no such thing as work-life balance. I think you may have said that before, you're with yourself all day. It just totally makes sense, right? But once you have that, then you owe it to that person to, number one, gain their agreement on what the ideal scene is. Like, where are we going? Like, right, if I pull up in front of your house and I open up a car door and I'm like, Neil, hop in, first thing you're gonna ask me is where we're going. Are we going Disney World or Universal? And I'm gonna tell you where we're going, and we're gonna go there together, right? So first, gain their agreement on where you're going. And number two, give them the tools and training and equip them with the skills to get you there. So once I look in the mirror and I'm like, I hired the right person, I got their agreement on where we're going and what we're doing, and I taught them every tool and every step needed in the position and role they're in to succeed at it. Well, now all I have to do is sit back and just measure the outcomes and measure the performance. And if in fact it falls short, it's my responsibility to look in the mirror and say, what wasn't duplicated? What wasn't replicated? What's not being instituted over here? And how can I best help that person? And then I own that. I own that accountability. I hope as they see us own it, they themselves will own that greater level of accountability for the position they've been given.
Yeah, I like that. And it is about finding that right fit, right? And so you gotta look for the honesty and ethical behavior that you're talking about there, the transparency. And I think hiring to the role is very critical, because let's say like it's front desk, for example, you need someone who has a history of excellent control over people, right? So what have they done in their career, in their life, where they're very good at controlling people? You got to get people to show up on time. You got to get people to book appointments, all that kind of stuff, right? And so do they have a verifiable history of that? And then are they, meticulous too? Can they get things organized? Can they handle don't use the word multitask because there's no such thing as multitask where you got to go from one task to another, but can they handle a lot of different tasks at one time and get things done, right? So that's kind of the person that you're really looking for at the front desk. So you look to hire the behaviors for that role. And then someone on billing, right? So someone on billing, they love doing, they're very meticulous, very organized, but they love doing the repetitive actions. Like there's some people that just like to do things over and over again. That's why we have accountants and bankers in this world. And then we've got people that love to be creative. And that's why we have graphic designers and artists, right? That they would hate to be an accountant, right? An accountant is no good at being a graphic designer because they can't, think that way either. So we got to find the right person that loves doing that kind of task. And I've definitely made those mistakes in the past with hiring where I like the person and I think that they could be a good fit, but I never really looked at their likes and what they were good at when it came to the matching them to the tasks. So I've definitely hired people who like to do a lot of new things. If they like to do a lot of creativity, like to do new things, and then you put them in a position where they have to do more repetitive tasks, they hate it, and then they usually leave. Right?
Yeah, 100%.
So
And
yeah, go ahead.
you're right. You're right in what you're looking for. And sometimes it's a matter of asking the right questions, right? Like if I'm looking for somebody to be in my marketing area, such as the world you're in, I'm looking for the person who starts the conga line at a wedding. Like if you're going to be my patient care rep and you're going to go out and talk to people and you're going to paint the town red, like, are you that person who's going to start that conga line? If you're that analytical number crunching person, you may be just right for my office administrator role. If you have that lower aptitude where you're like, oh, I don't like change. I've lived in the same place for 30 years and I've had this. Well, you're a great biller, man. I don't need somebody who I don't even like driving home the same way twice. Like I'm looking for variation in my day-to-day life all the time. I would be a horrible biller because that would just, oh my gosh. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, I know I'm, more of a little bit diverse in what I'm looking for. So matching the person to the position for sure. And then we own it to properly onboard them for success. I find all too often people get thrown in and taught by somebody who's already doing the job instead of having a train the trainer to train people. I think that's been a secret to our success is having a separate training department and having a separate quality control department. And I think you guys have, I'm sure, similar systems in place for you too. It's not just enough to produce. It has to be quality controlled.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great point. And so I'm curious, as you've coached different practice owners as they've scaled and grown, let's say 2, 3, 4 locations, what does that admin function start to look like? Do they have one office manager per clinic? Do they have one office manager that goes over both? Do they centralize billing? I'm just kind of curious what you've seen that helps people scale. So for our listeners out there, if they're a 1 or 2 location practice, they have that ambition to go bigger, what's the kind of that next step for them from an admin side?
Yeah, no, that's really great. I try to, when you're 3 or less clinics, I try to keep it more decentralized. So each office takes its own culture, takes its own flavor, plays its own music, if you will. So a clinical director with an office manager / senior front desk coordinator, because we can't really have these higher payrolls. So I like to have somebody who's senior in that area. That will help a lot in regards to that. Once you start getting to 3, move into 4, well, now we should have one person oversee all 4 of those offices, or one administrator oversee the administration of the ideal operations administratively and clinically, because the demands are different, right? The demands of the clinician are somewhat different than the demands of the administrative staff. Nowadays, I think we just came back from the Brand Triumph conference with Physical, and we were just flooded with people saying, I can float somebody up to my front to do check-ins over the counter and schedule out an eval when the patient comes back from the therapist. If all of that other stuff was taken off our plate, oh my gosh, my payroll as a percentage GI would drop substantially, and my consistency of delivery would be ideal so that I could focus my attention on, DPTs, PTAs, and techs, which really means I want to have the ideal company culture, the ideal patient experience. I need to have the ideal community awareness and brand awareness. And that's where you guys come in, because I was like, do not do this yourself. You literally need professionals to literally establish that level of consistent message out in your community. I mean, if I say just do it, you think Nike, right? If I think Ultimate Driving Machine, it's BMW. That's what you guys do and you just can't do that when you're a smaller office.
Mhm.
So yes, I like decentralized, clinical director, office manager, or lead front desk person to control each local office. 3 or more, 4 or more accurately. I like to centralize those functions and then just let there be senior people. But honestly, Neil, one of the most important things, no matter whether you're one office or you're 300 offices, you have to have an employment ladder. You have to have some level of achievement, some level of growth development for the people that you work with. Otherwise, you'll lose the spirit of the game. I mean, how many goals do we have to score to win? I don't know. They don't matter. You don't want that environment.
Right. That's good advice there. I like that. And I it was interesting that you brought that up in sort of like what people were coming up to you at the conference and verbalizing what I've seen a lot in the market, right? And so what I see with people who sell their practice a lot or buy into a franchise or sell a portion of their business to basically handle the admin function. Right? I mean, that's the thing that you hear all the time is like, I don't want to handle all the billing. I don't want to handle the office or the hiring or all this other stuff, right? I just want to treat patients, right? Or I want to just kind of focus on clinical care. And so I know that you have different solutions like from the admin side. Is that something that you hear commonly and kind of how do you help people, address that?
Yeah, 100%. What was a shocker for me, and I think, let me know, what do you think about this? I interviewed 30 people over the weekend in Denver that had come up and we had talked to, and I pulled them aside and I asked 30, I think it was 31, 32, a little over 30 people. And I asked them, I said, if you could tell me 1, 2, 3, rank it, what was their number one biggest concern or challenge or area of attention that you have on your practice that if you could solve, you would feel very relieved? Like, list them out for me. What's number 1? What's number 2? What's number 3 area? And I was shocked. The answer I got, I did not expect. They said number 1 was credentialing. Number 2 was insurance verification authorization. Number 3 was their front desk operations. And then number 4 was their marketing. It was like right there between marketing and staffing. But marketing staff were not even in the top 3, which
Wow.
made me realize that obviously your group and back in the day when I started my clinic in 1997, 99, I opened up 6 offices. And I'm telling you, man, I ran the Cat 5 cable. I painted the walls. I laid the stuff. I mean, I did whatever. I plugged in the computers and got the network going in. Oh my God. That's not today. That is not today. And rightly so. And I don't know. I would love to hear your opinion. I think the younger generation is saying, Neil, you've mastered this. I'm going to put this in my budget for you to continue mastering this for me. Why would I want to go? The journey you've had and the years of experience you've had in it is such a value. It is so worth the budget that I would afford to that. And I'm finding they're looking at the other administrative functions the same way. What does Business 101 tell us? Find a need and fill it. Right? So yes, I've been in this training world for, 2 decades, but now they just want to know how to master DPTs, PTAs, and tax, their patient care experience, their company culture, and their brand. And all the other stuff, they just want to budget for it, like a flat rate budget. No pay, no raises, no reviews, no holidays, no sick, no FICA. They want all that to go away. They don't even want to look at it. They just want somebody else to run the numbers, manage it, and show the evidence of the results of what they're doing for them. I don't know. I mean, I know your stats. I know your success stories. I've seen your materials. It's night and day for your clients, but isn't that just what they want?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. It is. And here's the caveat I see with that, right? So you need to leverage experts in order to scale your business. Heck, we have outside help here, practice promotions, right? And we're approaching 8 figures. So like the bigger that you grow, the more you start to leverage outside help and vendors and assistants. And I think you're correct in that, heck, when I was starting my practice in 2002, you did everything yourself. You assembled the furniture, you say run the Cat 5 cables for the network, and you figured out how to become a network specialist overnight. So out of mother of necessity, right? But you're right in that people are looking for more of that help, that solution, and rightly so. I think that's a smarter way of running your business than trying to figure it all out yourself. Now, the other end of the spectrum that I see is that if you're relying too much on purely just outside help and you ignore it and you just dump it on an outside specialist, then you're not going to get the outcomes that you expect. And I see that, like, that's some big promises from groups out there that buy up clinics. Hey, we're going to run your marketing for you. We're going to run all your admin for you. It's going to be an easy life. You just have to focus on being a clinician. They struggle sometimes because they just realize, they think everything else is going to be handled for me and it's hands off. And that's not a good way to run your business. You need to be in the know with everything that's happening, but rely on outside help to get it done professionally. And when we work with clients from a marketing perspective, our top 10% of clients work very closely with our team. We're doing the heavy lifting for them, but they're in the know and they're making us suggestions. They're helping us understand their needs and their strategy. We're co-collaborating together and we're moving their clinic forward. But the ones that are very hands-off, there's only so much that we can do. We can't read their minds and what's happening inside of the clinic. And I don't know if that's something that you see on your end when it comes to the administrative side. If some people just say, I'm completely hands-off, and then, it doesn't work as well as if they're very, collaborative with you.
The top 10% of PT owners aren't just surviving, they're thriving. But what's their secret? Well, Neil Trickett's new Market to Grow book reveals how the top 10% of PT practices leverage marketing systems to simultaneously grow their new patients, attract top talent, and boost profit in their practice. You can learn from their secrets. Visit practicepromotions.net/book to claim your free copy of Market to Grow. Yes, you heard that right. We are shipping a free copy of Market to Grow to all podcast listeners who want it. Just visit practicepromotions.net/book to claim your free book. And now back to the show.
No, 100%. I will tell you, we have turned away clients who come in with that attitude, because we'll say, we will do the heavy lifting, but here's what we're going to ask of you. We're going to layer MEG Academy over the top of these services. So as we're providing these services, you're learning right alongside us why we're doing what we're doing, how we're doing what we're doing, what's the importance of doing what we're doing. I want you to be taking full advantage of the knowledge-based system that we have about everything, to the degree that my contracts actually say you must come off post once, a minimum of 1 hour a month, whereby we will come and sit with you in that Zoom 1 hour meeting, and we will kind of tell on ourselves. We will pull all the reports and we'll say, here's what we did over the last month. Here's the results of what we did. Here's what we're projecting for the future. Let's collaborate on what you have in mind for the future month, where you see things going. It is, as long as we are wearing your jersey, we're an extension of your arms within your four walls. We are collaborative, capitalistically together in that relationship. Meaning, as we collaborate more, we achieve a higher degree of success, both financially and peace of mind, as a result of our time together, as opposed to what we would otherwise done on our own. And to your point, Neil, absolutely, those owners that are like, teach me, show me, I don't know, and I'm glad you're doing it, but I want to understand it. I want to at least understand what your thought process is. What should I be measuring? What does that measurement mean? Like, what goes into that? Every one of our clients were like, you need to have a business strat plan. You need to clearly identify to us what your ideal scene is. You need to apply weekly management action plans, weekly maps to get there, so that we are part of that game, that soccer team, if you will. We're on the field with you. We're not just playing the game and you're the owner up in the skybox going, I hope they win. You can't be that. You can't be that. So yes, there's a lot said there, and I'll stop right there. But I see the same thing. The owners that are in the unknown or in mystery about things really can't help you be your best. Yeah. I really want us to be paired together.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And lesson learned as a practice owner, there's no easy button. So you can leverage help, and I think that's the smartest thing to do. Is leverage help where it's going to be the most cost efficient, but understand it, collaborate, and you're going to get the outcomes that you want from that. It's going to move your business forward. And I get it, because it can be so hard running a practice sometime, because you're pulled in so many different directions that you gravitate towards the things that you love and enjoy, right? So you know well, right? So clinical care the best, and the skills of hiring someone, the skills of recruiting for people, the skills of billing and collections. Like, it's not fun, right? It's not fun if you're interested in clinical work, right? So you can work with people that enjoy that kind of other work, but you still got to know part of that. And I told this story, I think, on your podcast, but there was a point in my practice where I was almost bankrupt. And we were doing pretty good from visits wise and everything, but the money just wasn't coming in, and we're trying to figure out what was happening with collections and billing, and what was happening here. And so I was too busy, treating patients and helping providers and things like that. But then there came a break point, right, where it's like, okay, we can't borrow any more money. We're maxed out, and we're over $100,000 in debt here. We need like action now. And so luckily back then I had a good business consultant that was kicking my butt to get help there and kind of figure things out. And it really came down to that our office manager, who was a fantastic person, had been a great office manager, but unfortunately she started to go through tough times with her family and had a lot of stress because their business was not doing well. Their business was going bankrupt. So her headspace was somewhere else. Well, that impacted our business. And then it wasn't until we had to make the hard choice to let her go. And then it was like I had to go in and I had to learn really how to do more billing and collections and the processes and the systems, hire 2 people, a biller and a collector, to catch up. And then I found like checks in folders and all kinds of stuff there that weren't being cashed. And it was like, what was happening here? So that's just an example. Like, if you don't pay attention to things, they will go awry. And that did happen to me. Luckily, we got things turned around completely in 3 months' time, because every week, where are we at? We just kind of keep pushing on those KPIs, and we got it turned around. So yeah, your advice is very solid there, Brian, for that.
Oh my gosh. I think we've all been there at one point or another, and I remember when I was running my practice, I was in debt, losing $5,000 a month every month, 85,000 in the hole. And I had spent 2 times I had gone to work, and I spent all night at work, and my wife brought me a change of clothes, and she's like, "You're embarrassing. Like, you can't do this." Like, I'm Irish. What do I know? I mean, it's just, you just work harder and longer. It'll pull itself out. She's like, "No." She goes, "Being a better therapist is not going to make this a better practice. You need to know how to run this admin side." And so I started to, just like you, Neil, I was like, okay, visits are up, patients are coming, doctors love our care. The problem isn't here. It's got to be. So one morning I got up early, showed up in the billing office, and I'm going through the drawers, and there I find a good 6 inches, it must have been at least 6 inches of EOBs just not posted. So without posting, patient balances aren't going out, secondaries aren't going out. So the billing person comes in, and I let her go. And then the guy in the chair next to, "Good thing you let her go, like with the postage and all." And I'm like, "Postage? What are you talking about?" He's like, "Oh yeah, she's been running her presents and gifts and mails through the postage machine ever since she's been here, man. It's like nonstop." And I'm like, "Well, you can pack up your stuff and go too." And he's like, "No, wait, what?" I'm like, "Yep, you're done too. You can leave." And there in the corner is the girl that we just hired 3 weeks ago, shaking and going, "Well, what are we gonna do? You just fired 2 of the 3 billers." And my wife comes in and she's like, "You're no longer treating patients. You're going to do billing because you created this environment. You're going to fix it." And that's when I really started to understand this is well beyond, just being responsible for oneself. I needed to be more accountable for everybody that I employed. And I finally learned my CEO hat had 3 major components. I needed to lead, educate, and motivate. So by me sitting in that chair, I was doing all 3. I mean, I was leading my team, I was educating myself on everything about billing and posting and collections, and I was surely motivating people, because they're like, "I've never seen an owner do that before." And so for 4 to 6 months, that's what I did full time. And after that, I'm like, I can help PTs with this. I get how this is all about timeliness. This is all about, detail. So, and now here we are 20 years later, we're still doing billing for hundreds of offices around the country.
That's a great story. Thanks for sharing that, Brian.
Yeah.
And so as you've worked with lots of different practice owners, and again, I know that you offer obviously your coaching consulting side of things, but as you mentioned, you do billing services for people, you do admin functions for people there. And so how do you help, or how do you get a practice owner to really diagnose what's really broken in their business? Because sometimes it's hard to see the forest for the trees when you're really in it. So what's kind of that thing that you do to help people really kind of analyze and start to really look at what may be broken in their business?
I think I always start with data. And I think that's a safe place to start because it can be very emotional. Whenever you're connected to green paper with dead presidents on it, it's emotional. Whenever your time is being taken, it's emotional. And I think time and money throw us into a bit of a tailspin. So I come in and I grab that owner and I'm like, we got to get a fixed point. Let's get a fixed point. Let's look at your 5 divisions, your administration, your marketing, your finance, your production, your quality, and executive division. Let's look at those 5 divisions and let's set a marker, an actual statistical target that each one of these should be achieving. Let's see where we fall. Based on how that's going, then we got to go back and let's look at what the individuals in those departments are or are not doing. And let's get those targets set up. Now we can invest in the doingness of each one of these areas so that the people in there can flourish and prosper because we're investing in them, like I said before, professionally and personally. But honestly, they need to really be excited about hitting their targets, really be excited about achieving these set goals. One thing I will tell the audience, and I'll share with you, you can have all that planned, you can have all that calculated, but here's the thing, if you're looking at the eyes of the person that you're trying to do this with, and they have any degree of disagreement, you cannot manage over disagreement. You cannot manage over disagreement. So my secret for your success is sit the person down and educate through transparency, breeds trust, be very transparent, and educate them as to the need for change. If you can't bridge that employee from where they are and what they're doing to have a need for change, there's no way they're going to take your advice and guidance on any system you're trying to institute. It's not going to happen. They have to believe in the need for change and literally kind of be demanding change. Like it has to change. Like it can't be this way anymore. When you get a person to that point, you will sail through because let's face it, how many people really like change, right? And what are they afraid of? They're afraid of the unknown. So if you fill the vacuum with information and data, goals and targets, and you have a path, people will take confidence in you. Like I said, CEOs lead, educate, and motivate.
Awesome advice. I love that. Yeah, so many times, I've been there where you push change on people and I haven't done a good job of educating them, right? And showing them like where we're at now and where we need to go. And so you just come in like, hey, we're going to do it this way now. And then they're like, okay, yeah, because you're my boss, right? And then, you don't have any agreement really behind the scenes, and then you're wondering, come back like a month later, why are we still doing it this way, right? So yeah, that I totally agree that you have to have the agreement of your people that you're working with in order to make it happen.
I mean, Neil, what you're saying is what so many owners do, right? We quickly see the out point and we go right into solution mode. And I'm like, whoa, hold up. It's an out point for a reason. Why don't we sit down and discuss with people when were we last doing well and what got us to this point? And let's get them all in agreement that this isn't acceptable. Like we can't stay here. We all get that, right? And once they're all like shaking their head, like, yeah, yeah, you're right. This is really, all right, well, now let's work on what we can do about it together. And let's start, boy, it just goes right in the right direction because it's kind of like when you raise your kids, you can bring home a cake, but it's so much better to eat it if it's the cake that you made with your kids and you crack the eggs and you put in the milk and you mix the batter. You do it that way. They're like, oh, I can't wait to eat the cake tonight because they had a part in it. They had they participated in that product.
Mm-hmm. That's a great philosophy. And just, I think approaching your staff, not just as doers, but collaborators, right?
Perfectly said.
Yeah. I like that.
100%.
So, if you're in your practice and you have that feeling like something's not going right and you just kind of feel like you're butting your head against a wall on some aspects, what are some of the key things that you would advise someone to regain control in their business? Because you said control equals income. So like, what's kind of that direction that they should start to work on control?
If you start to get that sense, the first thing I would look at is my KPIs and my stats and see if there's a difference there. What's that scoring like? Number one, I would really look there. And then the second thing I would do is I would re-look at the people I've hired and how I'm running them. Here's a common thing that happens, I see. setting the appropriate expectation of the juniors that I've employed. So many of us are entrepreneurs and we're highly motivated and we're go-getters and we hold ourselves to a very high standard. I mean, I know you do, Neil. I've told the story of me not even coming home. So I'm crazy ridiculous. But if I think for a moment that it's appropriate for me to try and find somebody to replace me and do what I do, that is unfair. That is an unfair expectation to the people that I've surrounded myself with. I have long been teaching my owners and CEOs, hire to the 85th percentile of what you're doing. If somebody's able to do 85% or greater of what you're currently doing or how you're currently performing, that's a keeper. That's a winner. It's not fair to think that you're going to replace yourself with somebody who's going to be at the same speed, level, competency, performance, outcomes, outputs as you. So I think to answer that question, when things aren't going well, what are we asking of our people? Are we asking too much? Or are we asking too little? Are we like, oh, I'm afraid, oh man, I can't approach her with that. She'll quit. I'm like, well, wait a minute. So is she running the business now? I mean, is she writing the checks? Is she the one signing the check? You can't run your business feeling like you're walking on eggshells around anybody. By the same means, you're not an oligarch. You're not a dictator either. You're to gain agreement. You're to gain their active participation on agreement. So make it about the situation and not the person. And I think things go so much better. But it's that mindset of I want to really enhance your ability to win and have an employment package, a compensation package that can exchange in abundance for those that go up the ladder. And I'm not saying everybody will. Not everybody's an entrepreneur. Some people are like, I love coming in. I love exchanging time for money, doing what I do, because when I go home, I don't even think about this place. But when I'm here, this is all I think about. You know what? That's a C plus, B minus. I'm okay with that. Sometimes that's not so bad. They're dependable. They're reliable. There's no harm being done, but they're not going to be your next clinical director. I think owners need to throttle up and down the spectrum of who's who in the farm.
That is great advice. And I'll tell you from my experiences, that's a skill. So it took me a while to really teach myself to be okay with, another person's expectations. Because you're coming from your own perspective, right? And your own perspective is like, I'm busting my butt. You got the entrepreneurial mindset of like, let's go, let's fix this problem, let's do it. And if you look in the world, there's not that many percentage of people that do that, right? And so you got to realize like people don't think like you, and you're owning your own practice for a reason. That's why, what is there, like 30,000 something private practices out there, and there's like 250,000 PTs. So a smaller percentage of people actually, take the crazy step of actually owning their own business and all the headaches that come with that too. But like you said, you have to put yourself in their shoes. You have to put yourself in their mindset and be okay with someone who loves coming to work, that's a great worker, but they don't necessarily want to go home with the work, right? Or have their attention on it that much, And so you have great producers, keep them great producers, right? Level them up in their job that they're good at, but that person is not going to be a great manager, right? And if you put them up there, they're going to fail and they'll probably exit the business. And I've made those mistakes too in business. So that's very good advice there, Brian. Thank you for sharing that. And so we know in today's healthcare economy, there's a lot of adversity out there, challenges for practices. But we do see clinics that are thriving and growing during this time. So what are they doing right?
Yeah, and it's interesting. I was interviewed for an article is what it was. I was interviewed for an article last week, and I was asked this question. Do you see the physical therapy profession being stagnant? Do you see it stalling? Do you see it dwindling? And I'm like, no, I honestly don't. I think what I see are people who are stuck in a time warp. They're just walking around complaining. They're complaining about everything. And it's just I'm just saying it like it is. Like if you're practicing like it's 1995, you have every reason to complain. You really do. You kind of like made your bed and you're laying in it, right? You can't practice like that. Like there's 5 business models, right? Mobile, cash, out of network, in network, and hybrid. Well, for those of us who have a brick and mortar place, it's obvious the hybrid model is the absolute best. If you can get 20, 25% of your revenue in cash, you're thriving. You're outpacing the dwindled reimbursement that we're all experiencing. Look, when I was in PT school and I was like, oh man, that junior year, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to make it. Like, this is tough. This is getting really tough. I mean, oof. And I would wake up in the morning and I would remind myself, somebody made it through this. I mean, other people graduated. If they can do it, I can do it. And I just got to buck up, camper, and just, lift my bootstrap and just do what it takes, And so I don't care if it's 2 a.m. I mean, even now I work 7 days a week. I get up at 5 every morning and I compartmentalize my time. Time management is super important for success, right? You have to have bandwidth to be all on when you need to be all on. And as I was writing or being interviewed for this article, I said, taking those people out of the mix, and looking at the younger generation, the more ambitious generation, they're not as afraid of change. I think they've grown up with so much change, social media change, iPhone changes, computers changing. I mean, oh my gosh, we're looking at holograms now, contact lens computers, self-driving cars, so much. They're just not, I don't know about, I can't speak for you, Neil, but I push myself to, I mean, I'm okay with change, but to the extent that I'm helping others, they're just like, yeah, change everything. And I'm like, well, it's good and bad. But I'm finding the owners who are in private practice today are willing to change. They're willing to throw out the box. They are willing to say, I want to understand SEO. I want to understand the mapping and the metadata, but I don't have the bandwidth to do it. And I think you probably see that. Like, they want to be a part of the process, but they don't want to carry the full weight of the process. And I find like there's a lot to be said about that. Being competent in a multitude of things is really the success to the secret sauce of the recipes today. Being unknowing, like I don't know how to do, is really going to hurt you in today's world. But trying to be an expert in everything is equally not as effective. It's just that degree of knowing how to integrate, how to make changes. I mean, like, for instance, I'll give some people some specific examples. Is that okay, Neil? I'll just give a couple. Good. So we all suffer a downturn in our visits if a full-time therapist goes on vacation. Well, what if you wrote a policy in the beginning when you're hiring people that says whenever a full-time therapist goes on vacation, the remaining therapists all increase their hours 5 hours that week? It's not a favor. It's not an ask. It's policy. It's just policy. So that way we're all covering for each other. We're all helping each other. You know what I mean? What if we do that? What if we want to increase the consistency and the importance of people maintaining their plan of care? What if we put a little script pad in our pocket, and at the end of the eval, I pull out my referral, my script pad, just like the doctor does, and I write a prescription for physical therapy. I'm like, you're going to come in 2 times a week for the next 4 weeks while we work on this meniscus grade 2 injury. I rip off and I give it to the patient. I said, bring that up to the front and they'll schedule out your full plan of care. Because we all know without that, the 30 feet that they walk from the treatment room to the front desk, they have amnesia. They don't know. I don't know what Brian's at. I don't know how often I got to come. So all of a sudden I'm making it important because I wrote it down. I increased that level of importance. You know what I mean? Just like if I coach my therapist and I'm like, you should know 5 personal things about every patient. So Neil, is that your patient? Oh yeah, that's my patient on the bike. Okay, give me 5, Neil. Okay, that's Samantha. She's got 3 kids. She's married. Her husband works at Northrop Grumman, and she's the head of the cheerleading moms club or whatever, And I'm like, well done. You then just pointed out to me that as a clinician on a day-to-day basis, you're more interested in your patients than you are trying to be interesting throughout the day. And to me, that adds a ton of value as to why people would come to my clinic. Those are just 3 examples of what I'm talking about.
Fantastic. Love those examples. That's a real neat trick with the prescription pad. I never thought of that before, but I like it.
Oh, they're like, you are a doctor of physical therapy.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, they do like, doctor, you are the doctor.
Well, I had my practice in South Florida. So, during the season, it was heavy snowbirds coming down from New York and the Northeast. And they, this is like early 2000s. So they had the white coat syndrome, right? Like, well, my doctor said this. Okay, yeah, but I'm saying this. Like, you need to no, but my doctor said this. Well, guess what? I got every PT in the office and PTAs lab coats. So we all wore lab coats, and it was this. Anytime you do an eval, they wore the lab coat, and night and day difference in terms of patients listening to you just because you put on a white coat. So it's just sometimes the simple mechanics of doing things and knowing your audience, what they're going to believe for that patient behavior. So that's funny.
That's like airbrushing your staff, right?
Yeah.
You're like, they're models. This is perfect. I love it.
That's
I
awesome.
love it. But
Cool. Well, thank you so much for. Go ahead, Brian.
I was just gonna say perception counts, right?
It does, definitely. Perception counts. Yes, positioning, branding, all that good stuff. And you're doing it all day long in your clinic. You just don't even realize it, right? But,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So awesome. Well, Brian, thank you so much for all your wonderful insights here today. I know our audience got a ton of value out of that. And if they wanted to know more about what you do and how you help clinics, where's the best place for our audience to go check you out?
I mean, our website is really good. www.megbusiness.com, super good. Grow@megbusiness.com. You can email grow@megbusiness.com. By all means, just, go, even from the website, you can form fill, come on in. What I like is just to have a discussion. I like just to have a discovery call. What's on your mind? What's going good? What's not going good? And let's just talk about it. If we have some suggestions, thoughts, and ideas, you can make a very educated decision. Like I said, having friends like you and relationships like this is what strengthens the community. And if I can help plug people into other strengthened partners of the community, whether it be financing or anything else under the sun, I feel like I had a good day. So that's what it's really all about. Check us out there, and I think we can help you.
Awesome. Yeah. So check Brian and his group out there at megbusiness.com. A great group to deal with there and helped a lot of practices. So Brian, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today and give us your insights and knowledge and experience there. We really appreciate it. And to all our followers out there, please subscribe to our podcast and then also to our YouTube channel. We've got tons of videos and advice for you on there, as well as practicepromotions.net. We have tons of downloads and resources for you to keep expanding your practice and improving your marketing. So this is Neil Trickett here from the Practice Marketing Podcast and Practice Promotions, and wishing you much success in your practice.
A free way for you to support our show is by leaving a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. It's a chance for you to tell us what you love about the show, and it helps others discover it as well. Just scroll down to ratings and review on your phone and click write a review. Thanks.